Hi everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. My name is Jared. In this video I want to talk about fire. I want to talk about the second coming fire. I want to talk about the earth heating up and wildfires and mass fish kills and just all of it. And I've done a video somewhat similar to this because I was curious about the fire at the second coming. What are we to expect? Is it something that happens all in a day, in an instant? Is it slow? Is what we're seeing right now across the planet, is it the beginning of that fire, the heating up of the world? I'm going to show you what I have. I've added some more stuff to my quotes A through Z spreadsheet. So this will be a little bit of a review with some new things to consider, both from the scriptures as well as quotes from the apostles and prophets, general authorities. And I don't know. I feel like I'm getting more and more convinced that that is in fact what we're seeing. That this is the beginning of that uh, fire, or it's a warning. At the very least, it's a warning of the approaching fire. So I have this up right now. Some of you have probably already seen this, but what you're seeing here. Okay, so you see the clouds that are white, but you'll notice that there's this darker haze right here. And this is actually the wildfire smoke from Canada. Okay, oh my gosh, you can really see it up here in Nunavut and Northwest Territories, right? And you can see like a stream of it just like coming down here through North and South Dakota, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, even maybe nicking Kansas a little bit, not where I'm at. But then I was looking at it and it goes like all the way down here. And I was like, are you serious? Does it really go that far south and down to like Alabama and um, a little bit of Mississippi, Georgia? I had to look it up. And yes, it is. According to ABC 9, it says code orange alert. Canadian wildfire smoke affects Tennessee and Georgia air quality once again Monday. So this is quite the event that's going on. When it was first showing up over New York and Washington D.C. and Philadelphia and the generally the Northeast, I thought that was kind of like a limited thing. I was like, well, that's pretty neat, and I did a video about it. I thought it was significant because it's the skies over these cities were made to look apocalyptic. But then it turned out later, a couple weeks later, Chicago, Detroit, the Twin Cities in Minnesota, and other places were experiencing the same thing. And now, this is the most dramatic that I've seen it, where it's essentially coating half of the country, you could say, or at least when we're talking about the lower 48 states. This is happening because Canada is having its worst wildfire season on record, and it's not over, obviously. So, pretty, I'd say, relatively quickly this year, it broke that record, and it's not even over. So that's really saying something. You know why? It's because Canada is a really large country, land-wise. Let's see. Yeah, 2 years ago, it was Russia that had its largest wildfire season in that nation's history or on its records. So, two really big countries, both experiencing their largest wildfire seasons on record. I find that significant, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Um, okay, so so this has been catching my attention. There's been all these like different news stories popping up. A lot of you guys have been leaving comments and sending emails about things. Too many to mention, unfortunately, for this video. But thank you all for bringing it up. And yesterday I was looking through the news, and this came up. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released from hospital with heart monitor after dehydration scare. So he was at the Sea of Galilee. I guess he passed out. He knocked his head, right? But he essentially suffered a heat injury. Okay, he was dehydrated, passed out. So I was like, oh, that's kind of weird, I think this notification came up on my phone because I follow you know, news stories out of Israel. But then later, I was looking through Fox News and I saw this. This is Jason Aldean. He's a famous country singer. And he was on stage. It was a concert, and he had to step off stage. Um, he had to like rush off stage. It says here on Sunday, the venue where he played tweeted out an update from Aldean's representative, explaining he was, quote, now doing well after experiencing heat stroke. So he was experiencing heat stroke. And then as I was preparing for this video, I was like, that is so weird that like two, kind of prominent people around the same time would be experiencing this. And as I was preparing for this video, well, lo and behold, Lil Durk, you guys know Lil Durk? I don't. Hospitalized for a week with severe dehydration and exhaustion. I may not care for his style or his music, but my heart goes out to him, and I hope that he recovers from that. So 3 pretty big names, all within just a few days of each other. Well, let me see. This was on the 13th for Lil Durk. Jason Aldean. This was the 17th, and then this story for Benjamin Netanyahu, the 16th. So yeah, within just several days of each other. So this might be something that you want to look out for if there's other high-profile people that experience this. I don't know. It's just like a weird little clustering. That's all. That's all. So I'm going to go through a lot of other things like records that are being broken and trends. Like I looked up the death rate from heat-related injuries and looking at other countries. There's a lot of interesting things to look at. There's a lot of interesting things to look at with the ocean and ocean temperatures. But I think the best approach before we do that is to look at these scriptures and these quotes and then start reading those stories. Okay. And before we begin that, I just want to give you the update on the Flood the Earth Challenge. We had a pretty big bump. We gained 39 new shares of the Book of Mormon, which brings us to 6,154. So keep pushing forward. The next milestone would be 7,000. So we're more than 10% of the way there within this, 1,000 range of the 6,000s. 616 people that have joined the challenge. We could use some more people. And remember, the channel goal is at least 10 copies of the Book of Mormon. Just at least 10. If that was the case, okay, if everyone shares at least 10, we would be way beyond this. Let me just put it that way. If you go over here, I have everybody's names down that has contributed. There's a fair number that have not reached 10, so I can only imagine what it would be if they did. So please try and do that. Just put it in the comments when you share a Book of Mormon. Use the Gospel Library app. Go to Scriptures. Click on the button for share for the Book of Mormon app. And then you can text it, email it, direct message, or whatever you want to do. Okay? It's never been easier to share the Book of Mormon, so just do it. Okay, so yeah, let's go over to my quotes A through Z. I have an entry here currently under column 24 called Fire at the Second Coming. Okay, as I've been trying to figure out what is this going to look like exactly. Is it talking about a literal fire? Is it talking about a fire from Christ because of his presence? Okay, so let's see what all these things say. So Ezekiel 38:22. And I will plead against him with pestilence and with blood, and I will rain upon him and upon his bands and upon the many people that are with him, in overflowing rain and great hailstones, fire and brimstone. So just talking about the second coming, and fire is mentioned and brimstone. Later on in the next chapter, I will send a fire on Magog, or Magog, however you want to pronounce that. This is in reference to the war at the time of the second coming that's going on between Israel and this alliance of nations, essentially. I will send fire on Magog, and among them that dwell carelessly in the isles, and they shall know that I am the Lord. Hebrews 12:29, our God is a consuming fire. I got some of these scriptures from the student manual, so that's why I have some of these. It was recommended. Revelation 18, verse 2. And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. And then later in verse 8, it says, Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, and mourning, and famine, and she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord God who judgeth her. So a surface reading or a light reading of this would maybe lead you to conclude that it's all going to happen in a day. Keep in mind, though, that it is talking about plagues and famine. Those are usually events that don't just happen in a day. Those are multi-day events, sometimes weeks and months, sometimes years. Okay, so in Doctrine and Covenants has something to say about that. So if you're thinking that it's within a day, I'm not so sure. Okay, but it does mention here in that same verse, she shall utterly be burned with fire. Okay, let's go on to the next one. 1 Nephi 22, verses 17 and 23. Wherefore he will preserve the righteous by his power, even if it so be that the fullness of his wrath must come, and the righteous be preserved, even unto the destruction of their enemies by fire. Now, this is in a couple of the scriptures that we're going to read, and it's something I guess that I've overlooked, that there's this concept that the righteous will be preserved because of the fire. And I don't know if you ever recognize this, this specific thought, the righteous being preserved because of the fire. But anyway, even unto the destruction of their enemies by fire. Wherefore the righteous need not fear, to all you that like to revel in fear, in worst case scenarios, for thus saith the prophet, they shall be saved, even if it so be as by fire. Then later in verse 23, for the time speedily shall come that all churches which are built up to get gain, and all those who are built up to get power over the flesh, and those who are built up to become popular in the eyes of the world, and those who seek the lusts of the flesh and the things of the world, and to do all manner of iniquity, yea, in fine, all those who belong to the kingdom of the devil, are they who need fear, and tremble, and quake. They are those who must be brought low in the dust. They are those who must be consumed as stubble. And this is according to the words of the prophet. Okay, so consumed as stubble. I'm sure most of you know what that means, but stubble is, I'm just going to read it from the Wikipedia article. Stubble burning is the practice of intentionally setting fire to the straw stubble that remains after grains such as rice and wheat have been harvested. So, and I'm sure you've seen this at some point, even if you don't live in a rural area. You have a field, right? It gets harvested, and the good part is harvested, the part that's good for food, right? The fruit, essentially. And what's left over is the stalks. And you can take that and it becomes straw. So that's where you get those straw hay straw hay bales. Straw and hay are different. That's where you get those square straw bales, and they have this weird misnomer. People call them hay bales, but they're not hay. They're straw, typically. Like when you go to like a farm that you go visit, like in the Salt Lake Valley, there's a place called Wheeler Farm, and it's like open to people to just come visit, pet the animals. You know, you'll see straw bales there, or like when you go to like these little festivals and stuff, it's straw. It's not hay. So it's stubble. It's stubble bales. I've never thought of it that way before, but it's stubble bales. And here it has a picture of a field burning, but I'll do it one better. I have a video. I have many videos of fields burning, and And I always love the smell and the sound and the sight of farm fields burning. It is one of my favorite things. But this is what it's talking about. It's like those that have been harvested, those that have been harvested into the church, right? That have partaken of the covenant, that have entered in by baptism, and they're on the covenant path and all that. They've been harvested, while that which remains is the stubble. And what you do, uh, either bale it, but uh, I'm not sure when people decide it's worth their time to do that. I'm not a farmer, but anyway, here in Kansas all the time, I'm always seeing these fields burning just like this. There's no shortage. It seems like the vast majority of them just go ahead and burn the field. So here's the stubble that's being burnt, right? So that's what that's in reference to. D&C 29 verses 9 through 21. For the hour is nigh, and the day soon at hand when the earth is ripe. For harvest, right? In all the proud and they that do wickedly shall be as stubble. I will burn them up, saith the Lord of hosts. That wickedness shall not be upon the earth. And then in verse 21, and the great and abominable church, which is the whore of all the earth, shall be cast down by devouring fire, according as it is spoken by the mouth of Ezekiel the prophet, which we read earlier, who spoke of these things which have not come to pass, but surely must be, as I live, for abominations shall not reign. Oops, where am I going here? Okay, section 64, verses 23 to 24. Behold, now it is called today until the coming of the Son of Man. And verily it is a day of sacrifice and a day of tithing. And I'm sure you're familiar with the phrase that tithing is fire insurance, right, for the second coming. Of course, it's more than that. It's not just like, oh, you pay tithing and you're good. But it'd probably be a good idea to make sure you're paying your tithing in full. In a day of the tithing of my people, for he that is tithed shall not be burned at his coming. For after today cometh the burning. This is speaking after the manner of the Lord. So this is the verse that I was talking about, where here you remember that scripture I just read in Revelation where it's like in that day, in a day. Well, this is a verse that comes up like when you click on the footnote for burning, it brings this up, and it uses basically the same language. For after today cometh the burning. This is speaking after the manner of the Lord. So it wouldn't seem, and I think what it's clarifying here, it's not literally one day, but like in the Lord's time, the way that he, and that doesn't mean like 1,000-year period, because we know 1,000 days or 1,000 years to the Lord is a day. It's just like it's like a period of time. Okay. For verily I say, tomorrow all the proud and they that do wickedly shall be as stubble, and I will burn them up, for I am the Lord of hosts, and will not spare any that remain in Babylon. And I should have highlighted this, the burning, in red. I'm not sure how I missed that. D&C 86:7. Therefore let the wheat and the tares grow together until the harvest is fully ripe. Then ye shall first gather out the wheat from among the tares. And after the gathering of the wheat, behold, and lo, the tares are bound in bundles, and the field remaineth to be burned. And that's what's going on right now. We're separating. We're coming out of the world. We're gathering to the stakes of Zion. Okay, so we are going this way. They are going that way, being bound in bundles. We've done a study on that on the channel. That just means that you become more and more solidified one way or another. Okay, and that certainly is the case right now. There's not much middle ground anymore. It's no longer the 90s or the 80s or before. D&C 133 verses 40 through 44 in verse 49, calling upon the name of the Lord day and night, saying, O that thou wouldst rend the heavens, that thou wouldst come down, and the mountains might flow down at thy presence. And it shall be answered upon their heads, for the presence of the Lord shall be as the melting fire that burneth. So here it's talking about the presence of the Lord shall be as the melting fire that burneth, and as the fire which causeth the waters to boil. Now think about this phrase as we go into these news stories about the ocean heating up, and as we talked about fish kills, because there's been a lot of those lately. So that's kind of interesting. Verse 42, O Lord, Thou shalt come down to make thy name known to thine adversaries, and all nations shall tremble at thy presence. When thou doest terrible things, things they look not for. Yea, when thou comest down, and the mountains flow down at thy presence, thou shalt meet them who rejoiceth and worketh righteousness, who remember thee in thy ways. This is another thing. I don't have the more explicit verses that talk about the elements melting with fervent heat. That would have been a good one to add. Gosh dang it. But that's another thing. It would make it seem like literally the mountains are going to like melt. I don't know if that means they become lava. And another thing to think about. A lot of time we read into the scriptures all these assumptions. Okay, like, oh, that means the mountains are in one day they're going to become lava and flow down. Well, we don't know that that's how it's going to happen. There might be some other process that we're not really familiar with that has to do with heat, the earth moving around, tectonic plates, stuff like that that could flatten out the planet, right? Because according to geology, mountains are formed when tectonic plates push against each other, and essentially one plate, because of all the pressure, it like wrinkles. Just like your bedspread. Like when you push on it, you have um, parts of it that go up. That's how mountains are formed. So it may not be because they're literally turning to lava. There could be just a whole bunch of geological tumult and activity going on that flattens out everything. So anyway, uh, present. Okay, verse 49. So great shall be the glory of his presence. See, there's reference to his presence, uh, like being the source of it, that the sun shall hide his face in shame, and the moon shall withhold its light, and the stars shall be hurled from their places. So I don't know if that's just in reference to the intensity of the light, the energy, both, the heat. I have no idea, but it seems like it's tied to his actual presence. Now, it's worth noting that he has literally been here before. He appeared to Joseph Smith along with God the Father himself. And at that time, there wasn't like a worldwide catastrophe. Uh, Neither was that the case when Christ came to the Kirtland Temple or to the Salt Lake Temple or any of the other probably numerous times that he's appeared within the temples of the church. But this time when he comes, it's going to be different. And the scriptures seem to suggest that it's going to be because of his presence. Okay, so now that's it for the scriptures. Now let's go on to the Millennial Star. That was the church magazine published in the UK. This is by Charles W. Penrose back in 1859. He comes, the earth shakes and the tall mountains tremble. The mighty deep rolls back to the north as in fear. And the rent skies glow like molten brass. He comes. The dead saints burst forth out of their tombs, and those who are alive and remain are caught up with them to meet him. The ungodly rush to hide themselves from his presence and call upon the quivering rocks to cover them. He comes, with all the hosts of the righteous glorified. The breath of his lips strike death to the wicked. His glory is a consuming fire. So Charles W. Penrose, he seems to back that up. And you know what? I should have. This is one of my older quotes. I've started adding who they were, like what their office was. Okay, first counselor in the first presidency, or that's what he ended up becoming. But okay, this is Charles W. Penrose. He ended up becoming first counselor in the first presidency. All right, I'll put that later down here. The proud and rebellious are as stubble; they are burned and left neither root nor branch. He sweeps the earth as with the besom of destruction. He deluges the earth with the fiery floods of his wrath. and the filthiness and abominations of the world are consumed. Satan and his dark hosts are taken and bound. The prince of power of the air has lost his dominion. For he whose right it is to reign has come, and the kingdoms of this world have become the kingdoms of our Lord and his Christ. Okay, let's go on to the next one. Bruce R. McConkie, Millennial Messiah. This time he shall come in flaming fire. The vineyard shall be burned, and every living soul on earth shall know that a new order of worldwide dimensions has been ushered in flaming fire. What kind of fire? Flaming fire is flaming fire. It is actual, literal fire that burns trees, melts ore, and consumes corruption. So, um, this kind of like brings up the topic of being translated or being quickened. That's going to happen to everybody that moves into the millennium. And we've discussed it a number of times on the channel. Comments have come up. A couple times it's been proposed that being translated is an ordinance and that you would have that done in the temple. The only problem that I see with that is that it's not just going to be Latter-day Saints that are translated. It's going to be everybody. It's going to be all the other religions and belief systems that remain after the second coming. So I don't think all those people are going to go to the temple to be translated. There must be some kind of, with that in mind. Now, well, let me say this. If there's like an initial translation before the rest of the world, like for example, being quickened and caught up to meet him, maybe there's like an initial group that first goes through that. I don't know if that's associated with the temple or not. There's not very much information about that. If you have information, send it my way. I'd be happy to put it here on my quotes A through Z spreadsheet. But I have not been able to get down to the nitty gritty of how this mass quickening is going to happen. It's pretty vague. The way that the scriptures read, and I think the way that most people read it, is that it's just kind of the way that the Christians envision it, and they would envision it the same way because they don't have much more information than we do. It just seems like it's the rapture event. That's the Christian equivalent, or that's what they call it. It comes from the original Greek. So it would seem that it would just be kind of like a woof, like some kind of widespread thing that would happen in my mind instantly, but I have no idea. But that's something to think about. You know, as these temperatures rise on the Earth, like they are right now, and I think we can only assume that it's going to get hotter and hotter. Maybe it just may be that it's going to get hotter and hotter. It's going to intensify. It's going to quicken, allowing people to have time to be warned, you know, and maybe think about life a little bit more seriously. So maybe the heat is being turned up little by little, but it's increasing. And then it's just going to, just exponentially just whoosh. Maybe when Christ comes, that's when it's just like, okay, fine. It's over. You're out of time. You know, it might be something like that. I don't know. Okay, this is from the Old Testament Student Manual. It says, and there, I don't have an author for that, so just the Church Educational System's Old Testament Student Manual, 1 Kings through Malachi. Quote, Jesus Christ is a celestial being. Since the sun is typical of the glory of the celestial kingdom, the imagery of burning in fire that describes the second coming would actually be caused by the glory of Christ's person. Or could. Not would. Could. So, it would seem to me that the prevailing view in the church between apostles, prophets, others in authority that have commented on it in the church manual, it seems like the prevailing opinion is that it's Christ in his actual presence. That's what actually causes the fire. So is that what's causing the earth to heat up right now? Maybe, maybe not. You know, there could be two scenarios. It could be heating up due to whatever, I don't care so much the reason, but I don't accept the human-caused climate change. I don't think that that's very realistic. So it could be heating up due to natural circumstances, right? But then that's separate from Christ coming physically close to the earth and then consuming it with fire. So there could be a difference. Or, like I said, it could be the same thing where some kind of process is going on, maybe pre programmed into the earth. I don't know if it has anything to do with his proximity to the earth, but because of him and because the earth is approaching that time, so as the earth approaches that appointed day, it's supposed to reach a certain temperature by that time. It could be that, you know, and therefore, because of his glory, it's getting hotter and hotter. Yeah, does that kind of make sense? I hope that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay, this is from the Seminaries and Institutes of Religion Curriculum Services, Doctrine and Covenants Student Manual, Religion 324, 325. D&C 29, verse 9. The wicked shall be burned as stubble. Is this passage figurative, or will the wicked really burn? President Joseph Fielding Smith said, "It is not a figure of speech that is meaningless, or not one to be taken, or one not to be taken literally when the Lord speaks of the burning. All through the scriptures, we have the word of the Lord that at his coming the wicked and the rebellious will be as stubble and will be consumed. Isaiah has so prophesied. Surely the words of the Lord are not to be received lightly or considered meaningless." End quote. And then the manual says, Christ is a glorified celestial being, and the glory of such beings is comparable to that of the sun. The presence of Christ, when he comes in his glory, will be as a consuming fire. Oh, well, here it's just saying matter of factly, whereas in the other manual it said could be, so I don't know. The mountains will flow down at his presence, the elements will melt with fervent heat, and the waters will boil. And I'm going to show you something pretty interesting about the oceans heating up in just a little bit. It seems like it's getting close to that boiling point. Even the sun will hide its face in shame. The scriptures also talk about the time when, quote unquote, devouring fire will be poured out upon the wicked. And I think that's the last one I have. Yeah. So that's all I have so far in my study on this topic. It would seem that there's more scriptures to be added to this, so I'll just do that over time. But let's go ahead and take a look at some of these articles. So we just talked about, just as a reminder, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, country singer Jason Aldean, and Lil Durk all recently experienced heat injuries. Okay. I've wanted to find like some of the actual numbers of heat-related deaths, and that's kind of elusive. So across a few different websites, this one just has to do with Florida. Heat-related deaths in Florida from 2010 to 2020. And as you can see, there is an upward trend. If you were to draw like a line, that goes through here, it's like the average, if you were to average these numbers, or just, a trend line. I don't know how it's defined exactly, but it would probably go something like this. So it's going up over this decade. I have another one here. This is also Florida, 2005 to 2018. And it reveals the same thing, only maybe a little bit more dramatic. That trend line is probably a little bit steeper than in this previous one. This is for Europe. This is put out by the European Climate and Health Observatory. Could be biased, probably is, I don't know. But I don't tend... Okay, look. Sometimes there's a tendency to just be like, oh, it's CNN, or oh, it's the European Climate and Health Observatory. They must be completely biased. None of their information is good. Well, there's no doubt that they're biased, and some of the information could be biased, but you can only be biased to a certain point before it's just outright ludicrous. Right? That's why I look at these different websites, because it is still possible for them to report objective information. And if you're just using your mind and using good common sense, you should be able to see through when they're trying to twist or bend facts. Okay. So, again, I think it's good to avoid the extreme zealot type mentality where it's like black and white. No, I will never read anything from da 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 da. So, as far as these numbers go, I don't know, but I'm going to go ahead and use them. It doesn't really surprise me if this is accurate. So this is from going all the way back to 1999 until 2019. All right. So you got a good 20 years here. And this one definitely has a upwards trend line. It's definitely gone up. So it is getting hotter in the world. And then therefore, naturally, more and more people are dying. Is this part of the burning event, the beginnings of it, that'll just keep ramping up until a particular day when nobody can live unless they're translated? I think that's a pretty good possibility. And like I said, the reason why is because it gives people ample time to think about things. It's kind of hard to ignore. Um, Even if you choose to ignore this, other things going on in the world are hard to ignore. How the world's just getting crazier and crazier, socially, politically, natural disasters, everything. So it gives people a merciful amount of time to change their ways, and that's how the Lord works. He gives people a chance to change their ways. Okay, so now we're getting into the news stories. This is NBC News. History-making heat set to spread after weekend of triple-digit temperatures. History-making heat wave that baked southern U.S. communities with triple-digit temperatures over the weekend will offer little relief this week and could spread dangerous conditions farther across the Sun Belt. About a third of U.S. residents, that's an interesting number, a third, because, that's always brought up in the book of Revelations and sometimes other places. And by the way, I know there's usually a tendency to read things very, very literally. But I always think back to what Gerald Enlund said when he came to my mission and he spoke at his own conference. He was talking about the host or the third part of heaven that followed Satan. And he pointed out, I think very accurately, it doesn't say exactly 33%, like it's a percentage. It says a third part. And I tend to agree with him. Maybe that's something I can look into a little bit more. I don't know if anybody else has spoken about that, but it makes sense because when you think about it, when we move into the second coming and into the millennium, a third part of the earth is not going to be following us. And that I'm saying us, assuming that we make it. Because you have three different groups. People that are currently living a celestial law, people that are currently living a terrestrial law, people that are living a telestial law. So a third part, just like in the pre-existence, there was a third part that didn't go, and so those two other parts did come to Earth, and now we're here in mortality, and we're approaching a hard deadline. And a third part, it's like the same pattern. A third part is not going to go. And so whenever it's talking about trees and fish and stuff like that, I think that there could be some literalness to it. And I don't know, for all I know, maybe it will be 33% or maybe it's a third part of something, but it may just be kind of conveying a deeper spiritual message that all these varieties of people, the variety of humanity, a third part is not going to make it through into the millennium. Okay, let's see. The center of heat, about a third of U.S. residents were under excessive heat warnings, advisories, or warnings Sunday as firefighters fought fast-moving brush fires in Southern California. temperatures neared 130 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but let me do that for my international viewers. Converted to Celsius. So that's 54.444444 degrees Celsius. Okay. So temperatures neared 130 degrees Fahrenheit in Death Valley, California. In some areas, including El Paso, Texas, marked a month of 100 plus temperatures. The center of the heat wave is expected to spread eastward Monday, with extreme temperatures continuing through at least next weekend, according to the National Weather Service. Heat indexes this week are expected to spike to dangerous levels among the more humid Gulf Coast and in the southeast. So if you're in that area, please, for the love of all that is good, please stay safe. And if you're from outside the country, it's referring to this part of the United States right here. Okay, it's going to be really hot and humid. Please be safe. Just like this guy. That's what you do. That looks good. Heat kills more people every year than other weather hazards. Now, that actually doesn't surprise me because as I've been tracking things like wildfires and earthquakes and stuff like that, the numbers are actually pretty low from what you might expect unless you did such an exercise where you keep track of all these things. So that's not hard to believe. Heat kills more people every year than other weather hazards. Heat waves can be more threatening the longer they linger because stress accumulates over time when people can't find adequate respite. This week could be particularly dangerous for communities like Phoenix, which could experience its hottest ever 7-day stretch, according to the National Weather Service. Now that's saying something for Phoenix. Phoenix gets hot, obviously. If you're at all familiar with Arizona and its capital city, Phoenix, the city, along with its surrounding suburbs in Maricopa County, Arizona, recorded 425 deaths associated with heat last year. Sunday marked the 17th day in a row that Phoenix high temperatures hit or exceeded 110 degrees. Yikes. And that's it for that. Glad I don't live there anymore. Okay, popular science. Extreme heat warning extends to more than 100 million people in the U.S., so it's about a third. The U.S. it's over 300 million. I can't remember exactly how many, but it's about that. Okay, so here's a hippie next to this temperature reading here: 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 degrees Celsius. This is Furnace Creek Visitor Center in Death Valley National Park. Quote, "This is the worst summer in recent memory," says Valley-Wise Health Emergency Medicine physician Frank Lovecchio. He told that to NBC News. And then he continues, "I've been working here since 1996, this same hospital, and this is one of the worst summers because we've had so many days in a row this super warm weather." Heat has killed at least 12 people in Phoenix so far this year. Later on, it says Death Valley, California saw temperatures of 128 degrees on Sunday, surpassing the daily record by a single degree in one of the hottest places on Earth. Now, I don't know exactly what it means here by this. I don't know if this is like all-time record. I have some more information about this, so maybe you can help me figure this out. But it says that in this article. There's this Associated Press article: California's Death Valley sizzles as brutal heat wave continues. Temperatures in Death Valley, which runs along part of central California's border with Nevada, reached 128 degrees Fahrenheit or 53.33 degrees Celsius on Sunday at the aptly named Furnace Creek, the National Weather Service said. Okay, whatever, 53.3, whatever. The hottest temperature ever recorded on Earth was 134 degrees Fahrenheit, or 56.67 degrees Celsius, in July 1913 at Furnace Creek, said Randy Severny of the World Meteorological Organization, the body recognized as Keeper of World Records. Temperatures at or above 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh, okay, yeah. 128 degrees is 53 degrees, and then 130 degrees is 54. Okay, so that was right. Temperatures at or above 130 degrees Fahrenheit, or 54.44 degrees Celsius, have only been recorded on Earth a handful of times, mostly in Death Valley. Okay. There's Death Valley, and it looks the way it sounds. That digital thermometer hit 130 degrees at one point on Sunday, but it's not an official reading. The National Weather Service said the highest temperature recorded on Sunday was 128 degrees Fahrenheit, or 53.3 degrees Celsius, a high that was unlikely to be surpassed as the sun went down. Heat records are being shattered all over the U.S. South, from California to Florida, but it's far more than that. It's worldwide, with devastating heat hitting Europe, along with dramatic floods in the U.S. Northeast, which I've done a video or two mentioning Montpelier, Vermont. I mean Vermont as a whole, but it's interesting that the state capital was hit. And then India, Japan, and China. For nearly all of July, the world has been in uncharted hot territory, according to the University of Maine's Climate Reanalyzer. So I would believe that. I would. I would not ignore this and say that they're just being biased. They might be to some extent, but I think that there probably is truth here. And especially because of this. Look, June was also the hottest June on record. And what is June now for the last however many years? What do we celebrate in June? And in particular, this June, what group or what philosophy or what belief system, way of life, whatever you want to call it, had its biggest celebration at the White House? It was in June. While this was going on, June was also the hottest June on record, according to several weather agencies. Scientists say there is a decent chance that 2023 will go down as the hottest year on record, with measurements going back to the middle of the 19th century, so the 1800s. The two hottest temperatures on record are the 134 degrees in 1913 in Death Valley and 131 degrees or 51 degrees Celsius in Tunisia in July 1931. Burt, a weather historian for the Weather Company, finds fault with both of those measurements and lists 130 degrees Fahrenheit or 54.4 degrees Celsius in July 2021 in Death Valley as his hottest recorded temperature on Earth. So that's interesting if he's correct, because who knows how good the instruments were back there, were back then in 1913, and then July 1931. So I don't know, and he doesn't really explain here why he believes that is. But if he's right, then the hottest day was 2 years ago in July. That's saying something. Okay, Burt says 130 degrees is very rare, if not unique. End quote. In July 2021 and August 2020, Death Valley recorded a reading of 130 degrees Fahrenheit, 54.4 degrees Celsius, but both are still awaiting confirmation. what is there to confirm? Like what? How? Okay, okay. There's something going on there. They have to confirm it. But like, seriously, a couple years later, you still. What does it take? Scientists have found no problems so far, but they haven't finished the analysis. NOAA climate analysis chief Russ Vos said. It's a very easy name to say. Okay, Canada's wildfires have now burned nearly 25 million acres. So, like I said earlier in the video, they are experiencing their largest wildfire season in the nation's history, recorded history. So here's a lovely picture of fire and that smoke coming down here into the southern part of the United States, which for me, that's just wild that it would travel that far. State of play. Canada's worst wildfire season on record has seen an estimated 24.7 million acres of land burned this year, as smoke from the blazes again triggered poor air quality alerts in Canadian and U.S. cities on Sunday. Now, one thing that we should probably look at this point, since we're talking about wildfires now, I want to return to this. So this is a tracker that I created, tracking only the largest. Look at let me show you columns. Here we go. Columns B, C, and D. These are all fires that are either the largest or most destructive or deadliest in that nation or state or province's history. Okay. So far this year, we have two. The Canadian wildfire season. So for the entirety of Canada, it's the largest. And then British Columbia now has its largest. British Columbia was already on here back in 2018 with the Tweedsmuir complex fire, but now, no, it's the Donnie Creek wildfire. I don't have the acreage on that yet. And since I'm doing this video, might as well update the Canadian, because what did it say? It says it's at 24.7 now. Okay. Because I have acres right here. 24.7. And I should update the, so today, this is July 17th. All right, still not as big as the Russian wildfire season of 2021, which reached 44,000, but the season's not over yet. You know, okay, let me see. When does the Canadian wildfire season end? Do we have a date for that? Historically, yeah, this is talking about Canada. This is from Vox. Historically, the wildfire season peaks in July and August, so great, and is over by the end of October. So we still have a few more months of this. The rest of July, August, September, and October. So it'll be interesting to see if Canada surpasses Russia's largest wildfire season. I have no way to predict it at all, but I would think if the peak is right now and next month, then that's probably going to give these numbers a boost. And then you have a couple more months after that. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. I did add a new wildfire on here, by the way, the Camp Fire. There was a comment by Remarkable Moose that says, Jared, more 2017 perspective. I am a county emergency manager, aka disaster response planner. Following the eclipse in 2017, 3 big hurricanes hit the U.S., Jose, Maria, and Harvey. Think Joseph, Mary, and Harvey. When the first wildfire in this country, the first wildfire in this country to take most of a city off the map, Paradise, California. So there's a little correction to that. It wasn't in 2017; it was in 2018. But you know, those 2 years are right next to each other, and it's easy to get those things mixed up. Oh, he has another comment after that. And then Paradise was further decimated by mudslides due to debris flow from the burn scars. And I do not know who Harvey is. Could not find him in the scriptures. So, yeah, I don't know. Maybe it doesn't go that far. Maybe it does, but it is interesting to have Jose and Maria. So I will look at those and then potentially put them on my Second Coming timeline. So thank you, Remarkable Moose. So I put that on the Second Coming timeline. Let's go to it right now. Timeline, Second Coming. Let's go down to 2018 because I just want to give you some of the details on that. It was in November. Oh, just the fact that it was California's most destructive and deadliest wildfire in state history. So the Camp Fire was California's most destructive and deadliest. Not the largest. The largest was the August. I want to say it was the August Complex Fire. Yeah, right here in 2020, just 2 years later. So California, my gosh, and then for all of 2020, that was California's largest wildfire season in state history. But if we look at the big picture here, I'm just going to zoom all the way out. So this the Yellowstone fires of 1988, that's where this kind of begins. And of course, I don't have this completely filled out. It's going to take me time to search other places, but you can see more especially starting in 2004, there's a lot of places that have had their largest or most destructive or deadliest wildfires. So that by itself, I would think would give you enough evidence that things are getting crazy and things are getting hot. Could this be as the result of like asymmetric warfare, unconventional warfare? Yeah, it could be. It definitely could be. You know, Russia had its largest wildfire season in 2021. Maybe this year is retaliation. Maybe Russia has uh, space-based capabilities that can ignite wildfires, wherever their satellites are. That could be. That seriously could be. But I can't say that for sure. And I don't know if that accounts for all these fires or if all this is just kind of like the perfect cover, like, hey, let's go ahead and do this because no one's going to know the difference. We're going to go ahead and attack you. Oh, crap, you're going to attack us. Here we go. I don't know. But one thing I think that we can say for sure, things are not normal. And things are getting hotter. And there's literal fire on the ground right now. All right. So where are we now? Oh, yeah, we're talking about Canada. Worst wildfire season on record. We updated the acreage. By the numbers, a total of 887 wildfires are burning across Canada, including 23 that ignited Sunday, per the Canadian Interagency Forest Fire Center. Okay. This was interesting. This is today, Monday, July 27th or 17th. U.S. climate envoy meets Chinese counterpart on hottest day ever in China. Not funny. Hopefully people are safe, but that's just crazy. China had its hottest day ever today on record. Moving over to Europe, Italy told to brace for most intense heat wave ever, as Europe expected to see record temperatures. So it's not just the United States, it's not just Canada or Russia, it's Europe proper. Europe, the globe's fastest warming continent. Yeah, maybe for good reason. Maybe for good reason. I just mean, if this is actually the fire of the Second Coming, well, I can't say that the West, including the United States and Canada, but definitely Europe as well, maybe have not been where they should be spiritually in general, right? Maybe instead they've been leading the way away from God. So maybe this shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Europe, the globe's fastest warming continent, was bracing for its hottest ever temperature this week on Italy's islands of Sicily and Sardinia, where a high of 118 degrees Fahrenheit is predicted, according to the European Space Agency. With June already having been the world's hottest on record, in the first week of July also setting a global record. By the way, the 4th of July, I think a lot of people didn't really understand what that video was about. It was talking about the average global temperature. So even though it may have been cool where you were, or it wasn't record breaking, that's not what it was saying. It was saying if you took all the temperatures across all weather stations across the world, you add them up and you average them, that average was the highest that the world has ever seen. So does that make sense? So yes, it may have been cool where you were, but if you take all the weather stations and average them, the average was the highest on the 4th of July. Okay, according to the European Weather Monitoring Service, Mother Nature seemed intent on July not falling far behind. Oh, well, Mother Nature or human caused climate change? Which one? Which one is it? Capital M, capital N. My gosh. Authorities started issuing warnings about significant health risks last week, primarily in Spain, where I serve my mission, where temperatures may soon reach a staggering 113 degrees in some regions. That's it for that. Climate scientists are alarmed by record water temperatures off Florida's coasts. This is NPR. It looks like it's a transcript of an interview. Jenny Steltovich Bylin says, "Yeah." Does it say who it is or who that is? Okay, whatever. If you want those details, you can just read this. So the host is A. Martinez, and the person being interviewed is Jenny Steltovich Bylin. Yeah, well, so usually in the summer, it can feel like climbing into a bathtub here, talking about the ocean, right? But right now, it's more like a hot tub. Water temperatures typically average about 88 degrees in the summer, but they're about 5 degrees higher. Water just offshore in Florida Bay near the Upper Key hit 98 degrees last week. So that is literally hot tub hot. Which that that's hard for me to picture. I haven't had like a whole lot of experience at the ocean, unfortunately. The one time I went was when we went to visit my mom's family in Portugal in 1990, but I was really young at the time, so I have, you know, very vague memories of that. Otherwise, I've only ever been to lakes for the most part, but I can't imagine that the ocean is ever really that warm. But thinking of it being hot tub hot, that doesn't sound right. The host, Martinez, how unusual is that? Steltovich says, the heat we're seeing now is really unprecedented. Even climate scientists say they were caught off guard by such a big spike. Ben Kirtman is an atmospheric scientist at the University of Miami Rosenstiel School, and here's how he described this ocean heat wave. Might as well read this. Ben Kirtman. It's bonkers. I don't know how else to put it. It's out of bounds from what we've seen. If you just wrote a statistical model and said, what are the chances of this level of warming? It would be 1 in 250,000 years that would happen. Okay, yeah, I'm going to highlight that. So he's just saying that compared to how things had been in recorded history, if you were to suddenly throw those temperatures into the mix and be like, oh, how often does this happen? You'd be like, oh, well, that only happens once in every 250,000 years. So it's very not normal, right? And I want to call your attention back to that scripture Where is it? Where are you? Oh yeah, I clicked out of it. Go to quotes A through Z. Do a search. Control F for boil. Where is it? Oh yeah. Okay, so this is from the seminary and Institutes of Religion. This is the Doctrine and Covenants student manual. The presence of Christ when he comes in his glory will be as a consuming fire. The mountains will flow down at his presence, the elements will melt with fervent heat, and the waters will boil. Now, I know that that's from a specific scripture. I'm not going to try and find it right now because this video is running long. I'll just have to add it some other time. But think about that as we're thinking about these ocean temperatures rising. You know, they're not boiling, but is that maybe going to be what we're seeing pretty soon? It could be. I don't know. Highest ocean temperatures ever recorded for the month of May, NOAA says. Four main factors are contributing to such historic warming of global sea surface temperatures: human-induced climate change, a developing El Nino event, effects from the 2022 Hunga Tonga Hunga Hapai volcano eruption. Do you remember that? That's how 2022 started, was with the largest explosion on Earth, including nuclear explosions. The largest one that recorded history has ever seen. There's been probably and almost certainly larger explosions before that point, just not recorded by modern standards. This is the largest one that we ever saw. So they're saying that that is affecting this. And new shipping emissions policy aimed at reducing air pollution, said Daniel Swain, a climate scientist at the University of California, Los Angeles. Some regions are experiencing temperatures of up to 7 degrees higher than average for this time of year. In Cabo Verde Island, where hurricanes typically form, the water is typically 75 degrees Fahrenheit, but is currently measuring 82.4 degrees. Yep. Combined land and ocean temperatures in May were the third warmest on record, with surface temperatures increasing about 0.97 degrees Celsius or 1.75 degrees Fahrenheit above the 20th century average. Rocky Belota, climatologist for the NOAA National Centers for Environmental Information, told reporters. So here's a graphic that they have of that. So I don't know if like this red area indicates like all portions of the ocean that are 7 degrees higher than normal. I don't know if that's what that means, but it probably does. I don't know. You can probably find that out elsewhere, but that's going to be beyond the scope of this video. And then lastly, headed off the charts. World's ocean surface temperature hits record high. Let's see. A global map using data from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration showing areas in orange and red where temperatures have been above the long-term average. And boy, oh boy, are they off of the coast of like Peru and Ecuador right there. But yeah, just kind of all over the world. The temperature of the world's ocean surface has hit an all-time high since satellite records began, leading to marine heat waves around the globe, according to U.S. government data. Climate scientists said preliminary data for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, showed the average temperature at the ocean surface has been at 21.1 degrees Celsius since the start of April, beating the previous high of 21. So 21.1 compared to 21, so 0.1 higher, set in 2016. Quote, the current trajectory looks like it's headed off the charts, smashing previous records, said Professor Matthew England, a climate scientist at the University of New South Wales. And I think that is it. It is Charles W. Penrose. Okay. So, um, there's any number of ways that you can look at this. Uh, oh yeah, and by the way, I was going to bring this up. I have this tracker for um, large die-offs, okay, including fish, but also whales, sharks, trees. Just anytime that there's like a big die-off of some species, I'm trying to just kind of loosely. I'm not like really making it a high priority, but I have this tracker, and in column I have the cause according to the news article that I read, and I would say the leading cause of a lot of these fish kills and die-offs is oxygen depletion. When like the water gets warm, it reduces the amount of oxygen in the water, so fish actually suffocate. There are a few where it was because of heat. For example, a dried up creek bed. Um, there was another one. Yeah, right here. This one, it was a bunch of salmon, trout, suckerfish. It was the number was in the thousands. The numbers, as far as like how many died, that's like almost impossible to get a precise number because it just depends on where it's being observed and who's doing the counting. But it was in the thousands, and it was because of the McKinney fire. This was in California. It burned soil, rocks, and down timber, fell into the river, and turned it into a plume of brown sludge that made its way downriver. So, not because of hot water, but because of a fire that made the water essentially unlivable for any life living in the water. So there's a lot of these that are because of heat of some form, one way or another, whether it's a dried up creek bed, the McKinney fire, or whether it's oxygen depletion. And I can't remember, it's been a while since I read some of these stories, but whenever there's red algae, I think that is also related to uh, water temperatures, but I can't remember. And then there's a bunch of unknowns. Okay. So I think that we would do well to consider what's going on, both with temperatures, with fires, with heat kills, with people that are experiencing dehydration, heat stroke, things like that. This may be a warning right here when it's happening to the Prime Minister of Israel. Who's going to be next? If you guys see anybody in the news that some prominent person that suffered a heat injury of some kind, let me know. This is something that I would like to maybe keep track of. If there's enough of them, maybe I'll keep a tracker. But if the Lord is trying to send a message to the world through heat, this might be one way that he does it. And we'll just keep an eye on it. But either way, it probably can't be good. That there's all these fires and heat. So I don't know. Okay, well that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Leave your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share it, and I'll talk to you guys later.